Nick, AblazeOlive, thank you for making the time.
Hello, good to be here.
Hello, welcome to Generally Speaking. We were talking offline, but we started to get into stuff that I actually want to talk about, and so I'll just start into it. Over the break, you have been reading a lot. Some manga and like light reading. Actually, side story. When I was at Cloud9, I talked to who was it, Kumo, and I kept talking to him about like. I was like, oh, I heard that you really like graphic novels. And I kept using the word graphic novels, but not like really knowing that it was really manga that like he was into. And like afterwards, I like someone told me he was like cringing like every single time that he's like, yes, graphic novels. But like he was too respectful to like correct me. But like I was trying my hardest. Like, you know, the grandpa being like, oh, you're into those graphic novels, right? And it's like, yes, grandpa, yes, I'm into the graphic novels. So manga, which I used to say manga, but it's manga. So anyways, manga. But then the other stuff that's really interesting was you're talking about one series that was 2,500 chapters, but each chapter is like a page or two. What is that series that you've been reading?
It's called Peerless Martial God. I was reading it for a while. I actually stopped reading it. There's more to it. There's like a second part of it, but I stopped reading it. It's basically about this martial artist. It's a pretty common like setting. It's like fantasy martial arts, magic, and it's about this guy who just like slowly gets stronger and stronger. And as he gets stronger, then he meets other people who are stronger and like goes to a different area. And it's like it's kind of repetitive when it's that long, because it's essentially what happens is he gets really strong and he gets to the strongest that he knows about, and then he finds a new place that everyone is that strong. So now he's weak again. But it's basically the same thing over and over again, which is why I stopped reading it, because it was the same thing.
But that's life. Like, that is life.
Yeah.
You like essentially are in your loop. And then if you're strong enough to get out of your loop and you elevate, then you're in like the next loop. Until like you elevate into the next one. It never ends.
Yeah, I guess that's true. To be honest, like it wasn't like the most well written. I only read it because it was really long. So like I knew that there would be like a lot, like I wouldn't get to this point where I'd be like, man, I want to keep reading, but it's not completed yet. Because there are other like stories that I'm reading that aren't finished, and I'm really upset about it because I just want to keep reading, but I can't because the author hasn't created the chapters yet.
So different people read for different reasons. Like some people just love the escape, other people read for information, whatever it is. Like for me, I read the most dry, boring things ever. Like Team of Rivals, Lincoln, or Building of the Panama Canal. Like David McCulloch, like really dry stuff about history. But I don't think I've ever enjoyed sitting down and actually reading a novel just for novel's sake. But you are the opposite, in which that you will just like read anything. Well, I guess what are the prerequisites for you to actually engage in a novel or read?
Usually it has to come down to the story. I really like I have like part of my mind wants to be create a book. I want to create a book and make the best book ever. That would only be good for me because no one else would like what I like, but I want to create one. So usually when I'm reading, it's because I'm really like entranced by the story, and I think that there are really good ideas in the story that's involved. So usually for me, I started reading more around like 2 years ago, and I would start off with mysteries, and I really liked reading like Agatha Christie specifically. So I read a lot of Agatha Christie novels, and that was like pretty much all I could read because it was really easy for it to be a page turner when it was one that short, and also it's a mystery, so it's like, oh, what's gonna happen? Like, who did it? Who was the bad guy? So for me, like one of the definite prerequisites is that there's a constant need for me to want to keep like turning the page, because if it's like too like open-ended and too hard to read because there's not like any substance, or not that there's not substance, but there's no like driving force, then it's hard for me to keep wanting to read. So like I started reading Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, but like there's like an overarching story, but it's not like so heavy-handed that like I can be like, oh, I'm excited for this to happen next. And that's like, it's still on my to-do list. I'm probably still going to read both of them, but that's like another big thing for me is reading is that I can easily like turn the page and like continuously follow along on the story. And then after that, it's generally just like what I think is cool. So like I think like people like being better than other people and then not expecting it is really funny. So people being like, it goes back to like the guy who's getting stronger continuously. Like he would get really strong way faster than anyone else. So then people would be like, there's no way you could beat me. And then he would beat them and they'd like mind break. So that's like the short like list that needs to be there for me to read a story. I'm usually like, I could read, it's just like, what do I have like the drive? And it has to come down to just the page turning and like, if it's a cool story.
There was a book written about like how like every story is about like a hero's journey or something like that, or but just the idea of that stories are pretty much the same kind of archetypes, or there's the same archetypes within stories and the same stories over and over again. Like, do you find yourself being gravitating towards the same kind of story, or yeah, or do you like more variety or what?
I think, I mean, stories in general are like, there's been so many stories that have been told that it's really hard to like make a really new and unique story. There's a website and it's called like TV tropes or something, and it's just like every single trope that exists in any story, and you can go and look at any like TV show or movie or book, I think is even on there, and comic books and manga I think is there, and it'll just tell you like every single common trope that's in it. So like, you know, a bad guy ending up being a good guy secretly being a bad, like it has everything. So when you look at like just how many stories there are, usually it's just going to be some rearrangement of those common like ideas, and the way to make it like interesting is putting the unique twist on it. So I think for me, like things being like basically the same story, I don't really mind, because it's all about that unique twist, and if the unique twist is interesting enough, then I think that's what makes a story really good.
What do you think about League of Legends lore? I know that it was kind of not great before, but like they put a lot of effort in building that lore and that story. So what are your thoughts on League of Legends lore and the stories that they've been creating?
I haven't actually like super read up on the lore. I mean, it started off like it started off with like the Justice Journal or something like that, and I didn't read that. I haven't really read most of the lore, but like with the new cinematics and stuff, it's been pretty cool. I was reading, like the lore now is actually a lot more interesting, and it's getting to the point where I would actually be willing to like read more about it. There's just not a big medium for it right now, other than just the lore on the champions, which to me is like too dry because it's just like two paragraphs. But like for me, like some of the stuff that I was reading about League of Legends lore was pretty cool. Like Silas was like originally, I don't know, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there was something really cool about Silas. I know he was chained by Demacia, and then he escaped and hates Lux, I think. I don't remember. But there was some cool stuff going on with Silas when he was released that I remember about the lore. But honestly, I haven't really read the League of Legends lore that much.
Have you ever written your own stories?
I haven't written my own stories for anything other than like school. I think I did like some drama stuff for school. But other than that, I haven't. But it's on my to-do list for sure. At some point in my life, I'm going to create my own story.
I feel like, as you said, like, wait, you said something along the lines of like you want to write your own books, so and it would only be for you, and like you'd be the only person who read it. Like,
no, I mean like to like rephrase, I mean like I would make the story that I would like the most. So if I was like, if I didn't write the book, I would have been like, wow, this book that this guy created was amazing. So I'd write it for me, and I don't know if anyone else would like it, but I would really like it, which would be the driving force behind why I would want to write it, right? And like keep going with the story, because I can think about what I would like. And also, another thing I really like, the other reason I want to like create a story is I think that it would be like really fun to do, just full stop, because whenever I'm watching other things, I'm always thinking about like from the creator's point of view, or like the writer's point of view, like them deciding what should happen, because there's a lot of points where things like Deus Ex Machina. Do you know what Deus Ex Machina is? Deus Ex Machinas are like sometimes good, but usually bad in stories. And when a writer can like creatively put in a Deus Ex Machina that doesn't feel bad, right? I think that's like super unique and interesting. And there are a lot of like, since I'm like reading a bunch of stuff at the same time, I'm getting like a lot of like different impressions on like different common ideas. And I'm feeling like very like motivated to try my own work at like creating and putting together all these ideas, because I'm sure it's a lot harder than I could imagine right now, but I think it would be really fun to just try and create the story that has like really unique takes on like pretty common ideas, and try and make that really fun.
I think that's all art, which is you ingest as much as you can. It's good artists steal, great artists steal a lot, meaning that the more you input from all the different directions, as you said, like the different commonalities, the more you're able to then put your own unique spin on it. Because when you start pulling from so many places, then it's really hard to understand like what you're copying, because then it just feels like your unique voice.
Mm-hmm. That actually reminds me of how I think about League, actually. I watch a lot of competitive stuff, so sports and like other games, and I watch it to like a decently, like more than just a common person watching it. So I have like a relatively deeper understanding, but not like a super deep understanding of anything other than League. And I think that having like a more in-depth understanding of those other competitive sports and games has actually helped me with my League performance, because I realized that like there are certain parts of certain sports that you get a much easier path to a very clear understanding and ideology. So like for example, in chess, because I watch a lot of chess, there's a really common saying, which is when you find a good move, you should look for a better one. So it's to like keep in mind, like just because you see something that's good, that doesn't mean there's something that's better. And that's something that's you learn really early on when you play chess, but like if you're playing League, that might not be something you ever think about, right? You might just see a really good play and be like, okay, that's all I need to think about because that's good. When sometimes you can find a better play if you think about that. So it's that kind of thinking and just pulling in all those other competitive games that I think has helped me with League.
So taking that into account, how do you find that great move, but then think one move ahead, but then one move ahead of that, you know, which is chess essentially. It's like seeing as far out as you can. So how do you do that in League?
Well, in League, it's definitely like not the exact same, right? Because chess is very like it's a perfect information game. So in League, it's more so about like, especially with like Herald was spawning earlier this season, for example, right? So like figuring out when it's good to like swap and take the Herald aggressively, or like stay in the lane and just take the tower. Both of them could be good, like if you're ahead, right? But figuring out which one's better is where that like mentality of looking for a better option. So it also comes down to stylistic choice, of course, but like when you're like winning a bot lane, for example, you're gonna have agency if you want to swap to top to take Herald. But if you're winning bot lane hard enough, it might just be better to just stay bot lane and win bot lane super hard, right? And it's not necessarily like when you find a good play to like there is a better play. It's just to keep that critical thinking in mind, that you shouldn't stop thinking just because you found a good option.
I have a two-part question. One is that you said something along the lines of that you are a high cap player, meaning that your ceiling is you're a high ceiling player, meaning that you have way more to grow. But then you've also said you have a good amount of confidence, but also then like how do you balance confidence with cockiness, or no, like how do you keep the cockiness down but the confidence up, and then how are you in your journey of reaching that ceiling that is really high for you?
Well, confidence and cockiness are like, they're pretty like, there's like a thin line between them, right? So it comes down to like inside, like deep within your own head, like how you feel about your own performance, right? And I think for me, probably the big difference between like cockiness and confidence is like cockiness, you're thinking about like the difference between you and other people, whereas confidence is you're thinking about your own just skill in a vacuum, right? You're not like trying to compare. You're just thinking, okay, I know about this high level, so I'm confident that I'm confident that I can do better than everybody with that high level. And to the second point, sorry, can you remind me again?
Yeah, you talked about having a really high ceiling as a player, and that you have a lot more to grow, but your potential is a lot higher than many others.
Yeah, I mean, for me specifically, right, like, it's kind of like what you were saying about, like, pulling in so many different ideas from different sports. Like, I think that for me, I have, like, a really unique way, like, a unique, not impression, but, like, unique, like, perspective on League, because I have so many other, like, experiences to fall back on, and, like, other, like, chess, like, ideologies that are very common in that. Most League players won't have that, right? And then, you know, hockey or like basketball, like all those combined, right, makes me have like a very unique perspective in my opinion. And I think that it also comes down to intention is a really big part, because I think something that not a lot of people realize is when you're looking at your own play, you're always going to judge yourself based on your intention. But when you're looking at somebody else's play, you're going to judge them based on their execution, which is a really big difference. So the reason that I feel like I have a huge ceiling is because I can tell from like my own play and my own perspective what I'm trying to do and what I'm capable of doing based on my own understanding of the game, right? So when I'm playing a lane, I know what I'm trying to do, and if I don't execute that doesn't, like, in my own perspective, like my own knowledge and looking at it, it's not that I can't do it. It's just that I didn't do it for X reason. And I might not know what that reason is, right? But that's where, like, my understanding of, like, I feel like I have a lot more to grow is based on that I have, like, I know that there's a lot more that I can do, and I'm just not doing it yet. And I just need to execute, or not execute, I just need to practice and get better so that I can eventually get to a point where I just don't know what else I could do, which will never come because you're always going to get better. But the idea is that you're eventually going to get there.
I think that's the tricky part, is that for a lot of people, they kind of know what the right thing is, but then to do it is really hard. So do you think most people struggle, at least with League, of knowing what the right thing is, or being able to do it when that moment comes?
I think it really depends on the person. I think some people will get like caught up in the pressure of playing and not know what to do at the time, like when they need to be able to know. But I think for other people, it'll be that they just don't know. I don't think it's necessarily like one or the other, and I think that's what makes certain players different. It's why like a lot of like pro analysts aren't necessarily like super high challenger. It's because they can't do it under pressure, right? For the most part. But that doesn't mean that their knowledge isn't grounded, right? They do know their stuff about the game, but it's just like actually executing in game where they wouldn't necessarily be able to execute. And I think it goes on the other side, because there are a lot of pro players that can generally have like a good enough understanding of what to do, but like not like a super deep understanding, or not necessarily pro, but like solo queue players, where they would have like a good enough understanding to know what they have to do, but like not super deep, so that they can play like perfect in terms of team play. So I think for sure it just depends on the person.
I think what's interesting, I was talking to your teammate Tony, and he was talking about how there are players who are more risk taking. They're more willing to take risks. And you said with chess, it's you know all the information, but with League you don't know all the information. And so maybe that's kind of part of the reason why there are a lot of situations in which the people take risks, in which that it's and just start to to Alex about this, of like it's a 60-40 chance or an 80-20, and the more you understand the game, the more that you're able to bring the shroud of information, or clear out the shroud so you have more information. But so then there's mechanics, there's the overall game understanding, but then there's also in the moment. Oh, and then communication as well. So mechanics, communication, overall game understanding, but then also being able to ingest what you see and be able to act on an opportunity, and then taking a chance. So I'm trying to formulate my question. And I guess my question is, how much of it is being able to see an opportunity and act on it quickly?
In League?
Yeah.
I think League, I think most competitive like games or sports involves that at some level. Not necessarily it has to be super quick thinking, but definitely like responding to the opponent's play, right? And chess is like it's a perfect information game, and there's not necessarily, at least in slow chess, where you have a lot of time, it's not about like how fast you can move, right? It's about like how fast you can think about what you need to do for the next X amount of moves, right? And in League, I think it's also very similar, where it's not necessarily that at any one given time I need to make some super critical decision. It's just what generally tends to happen is there's about like 10 or maybe 20 seconds max where you have to be able to make a decision before, at least in terms of a macro play, where it'll just be gone by that point. Because it takes about that long for that sort of timer to go away. So if you don't have the capability of like deciding or even identifying within that like 10-second window, then you're gonna miss a lot more opportunities than you otherwise would have.
You talked about it's more of like almost philosophy and applied theories from other games and disciplines. You also talked about Bjergsen and how he told you to read these books. So first off, what are the books that you read that he recommended, and then what did you get from those books?
He recommended me a book called, I think, Performing Under Pressure, and that was he might have suggested other books, but that was like the big book that really helped me. And as you would guess from the title, is about performing under pressure and how stress and pressure affects an athlete. There were a lot of really good ideas that came from that book, and a lot of really cool facts that I didn't know and I wouldn't have suspected otherwise. For example, when somebody is skydiving for the first time, the stress that they feel is about equivalent to how an athlete feels how stressed an athlete is before they play a game. But that's before they play every game, not before they play their first game, right? And you can imagine that when you're just skydiving for the first time, you're extremely stressed, right? Because you're going to be super worried about, what could go wrong, what am I going to do, right? In the book, they say that an athlete will deal with that level of stress before pretty much every single game. And that's not true for everyone, right? People handle stress differently, obviously. But that was what they found in the book. And it kind of like changed my idea, or like my perspective on like stress. It's like, I learned from the book, like being stressed is actually normal. It's okay. It would be weird if you weren't stressed or if you weren't afraid. Something that is like a common misconception is like people can perform better under pressure, which is just virtually not true. There are very, very, very few cases where people actually perform better in professional sports. What it comes down to is people can remember like specific moments where people had like very clutch shots or some example like that. But if you actually look like statistically, like everyone plays worse during playoffs in every single sport. like across the board, every single statistic is always just lower. And that was another thing that really like opened my eyes, because I didn't know that before. I was always under the impression that some people just did better. But that like gave me the understanding that like it isn't weird that I play worse on stage, right? Like I should be expecting to play worse. And if I don't play worse, then that's good, right? Like that's really good if I don't play worse. And if I play worse, then that's normal, right? I shouldn't like trick myself into thinking I have to play absolutely perfect, right? And it really helped me a lot when, like, it was the big difference between my 2018 summer and 2019 spring performance. Not like the only difference, but like that was what I think really helped. Was over the course of 2018 spring, I was reading the book and I was like applying the concepts that they were using in it to help me. And I started off being like really, really bad on stage, and I'd have really, really bad stage games. But then in 2019, I got a lot better about it. So that was like the big effect, or like the big takeaway for me, is like now when I play on stage, I feel a lot more confident. And that doesn't necessarily mean I don't have bad games. Everybody always has bad games, but I don't let it like take me over like it used to. I would get really, really upset when I lost. Or like not even that I lost, if I just played bad. And it is still true that I do get really upset or really down on myself when I play really bad, but it doesn't, it's not nearly as big of a problem as it used to be. Because it would just tilt me for like days, right? Where now it's like the few like hours after the game and then I'm fine, right?
Well, it goes.
No, go ahead.
It goes back to what you were talking about, which is the objective or subjective, in which that your intentions versus like looking at the play. And so if you're able to take a step back and actually look at it objectively that way, that's that's hard to do. Most people can't.
It's really hard to do, and that's another thing that like really helps with like improvement, is you're always going to have your own bar that you can get to. And with playing on stage, you can see like where your bar, like where your intent is versus how you play on stage, right? Like, and how different those are. And then your perceived ceiling would be how well you think you can do on stage. If you executed and did as well as you could through all your intentions.
Hold on for 1 second. We're going to take a quick pause for technical stuff. All right, so hopefully, do you have your Twitch chat open?
I do, yeah.
All right, just let me know if anyone's like audio is terrible or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, when you're broadcasting out of your house, you have some technical problems that don't usually happen. So, anyways, so in talking about pressure and stress, and it was interesting that you said that. People don't perform better under pressure, but rather people do take note in which that they perform at high levels despite the incredible pressure, and they perform clutch. Michael Jordan talked about with pressure that games would actually be the least amount of stress that he would experience, because the way that he practiced, it would stress him, like he would stress himself purposely to push himself to that limit. And that essentially that you're building up your strength and your tolerance for stress. So do you feel like getting stage games, or other than getting stage games and playing on stage, what else can you do to kind of almost practice strength and build up strength for those stressful times?
I mean, building like one of the things they talk about in the book is like trying to stress yourself out intentionally to like practice how you feel under stressful situations. So it makes a lot of sense to me that Michael Jordan would say that. And something I forgot to mention about the people that who perceived to perform better under pressure is that they just perform better than other people do under pressure, but not that they perform better than they normally do, right? So if it's like, for most people, it's like they perform 20% worse. People who perform well under pressure would only perform like 10% worse, right? That's kind of like the understanding that they talk about in the book. But going back to like intentionally stressing yourself out to like practice, I did something similar when I was, they have like a lot of techniques in the book, and I don't remember exactly what I did, but they talked about how if you can like intentionally stress yourself out, that you like get more used to the situation. So like having more stage games, I think, is like a really good example of practicing playing under stress. And it really helps for me, like personally, stage and like match games are like, the stage isn't necessarily too different from just a regular match game, but for other people it's not necessarily the same, right? So I can for sure, I think it's a really good idea that having more and more stage games for Academy is a good plan if they want people to play better. People will just get more used to playing on stage and playing in front of X amount of people. And it's not necessarily like a quick fix, but it will for sure help people play over time.
So compared to when you were you didn't do collegiate, you just went straight to scouting grounds, right?
I played on Challenger before I went to scouting grounds, and then I went to scouting grounds.
Okay.
But I played it like a year before scouting grounds.
How was your scouting grounds experience? Because you went to TSM from there. You got picked up by TSM from there? How was that experience?
Yeah, I did. The scouting grounds experience?
Yeah.
Scouting grounds was really cool. I went with a lot of people that became pretty close friends, and also people that were already friends. I was already friends with. It also was really cool to see like a bunch of pro players. So when I went, I was on Team Mountain, and I was under CLG. CLG was in charge of my team, and funnily enough, I saw Darshan and Jay and Stixay, and I saw basically a lot of the CLG players, which was really cool at the time because I didn't see any LCS players, I think, in real life other than the few days I was at Challenger at Riot Studios. But other than that, it was like the first time that I saw them, and I could see like it was very different from my previous experience on a team, and seeing like how they approach practice and how they approach like learning and stuff like that. I didn't have a ton of time, which is unfortunate. It's like one of the things that's they're trying to improve about the future scouting grounds. Because for when I went, we didn't have that many days of practice. It was like we had like 3 or something, or maybe even 4.
Wow.
But we had very, very little actual practice days. So for me, like the overall experience was a huge positive. I mean, my goal when I was going there was just to get as good as I possibly can. It was really fortunate that I even got in. I had to go on like a crazy win streak, which was pretty troll, but it was super fun going there. I had a blast.
So you just in general, kind of like, some people have a much more optimistic, positive like demeanor. Like, where did you get your optimism from?
My optimism?
Or are you like a secret cynic that I just don't know about?
I think for me, it comes down to like team environment. So in general, I'm a pretty positive person. Usually like when I'm like with other people, then let me rephrase. When I'm like outside with like, when I'm like in a social environment, right? I don't try to be antisocial, but I still try to be myself, right? So I try to so like my friends are people that have like the sort of same sense of humor, like same like ideologies that I do, right? So that I can relate to them. And my optimism basically is just I really like fun, and it sort of circles back to like stories. I mean, everyone likes fun, right? But like what I mean is like it comes down to like stories, right? So like I want to create a story because I think it would be fun, right? And I think that for me, when I'm like with people, I want to like be like in a fun environment. I think it would be. It's like it's definitely a time and place thing, but I think like in general, it's better to be. For me personally, for me to like have like the most enjoyable experience with my boys, to be like optimistic and positive, right? That doesn't necessarily mean like I'm like forcing it, right? And it also doesn't mean that like I'm never negative, right? Because for sure I know, especially after match games, if I lose, I'm really, really sad, right? And I'm not very positive. I'm not necessarily positive, but I'm not very like outgoing after a loss. So it's definitely like a time and place thing. But for my optimism, I think it just comes down to I think it's like more enjoyable experience for everybody, including myself.
So then with, well, I think there's like almost like a biological aspect of it as well. Same thing you talked about stress, is like no one performs better under pressure or stress. And probably the same thing is said to be true, Mitch, that joy and fun and play, I know on a creative side, you're much more creative and creating new connections and trusting that you can try new things when you're trusting and in that playful experience. So for you, do you and do your teammates play better when you guys just are having more fun and are more playful or trusting?
I think in general, fun is super important. I think like the people that are the best at what they do, if you look at like other sports, you're never gonna see the best player at any sport say, yeah, I don't like this game. I only play because I'm good at it. You're never gonna see that. Every single best player in everything says that their game is the best game ever, and that they're so happy that they get to play it all the time, right? So for me, I think it's super important that you're having fun when you play. And I think that definitely you have to be tentative on how much fun you have, because you can start trolling, right? And it's fun because it's funny, but it's not like good for practice, right? But I think it's good that you're having fun when you practice, because like you said, there's a lot of good positives. Like you're going to be more willing to try stuff, and you're going to be less demoralized when things go wrong, right? And you're going to be more trusting in your teammates when everyone's having a good time, right? It's a lot easier to trust your teammate when you're in a like fun and joyous mood, rather than you just got destroyed every game and you're really sad. Then you don't want to trust your teammates because you're just going to lose again, right? So I think for sure like fun does help, but it definitely is like you have to be conscious about how you're having fun. So fun isn't necessarily like, at least for a competitive standpoint, fun isn't necessarily like getting kills, for example, right? For me, like for me specifically, like I enjoy League. I don't know, kind of like just like playing it for some reason gives me happiness. Not necessarily anything that I do during it, but like for the most part, just playing it, I'm just enjoy the idea of like playing on my lane and like trying to be my opponent. Like to me, that's what's fun. And rather like winning or losing to me isn't as important as like actually being able to play, right? So for me, that's where like the fun comes in for like practice purposes. It's like for me, I have fun trying to play on my lane like properly and as well as I can, and that's what I want to have fun doing. But I also would have fun in like a solo queue game if I tried to like dive him at level 2. But that's not fun. That's like fun, but it's not like good for practice, right?
With a couple things, you actually did say that there are pro players who aren't enjoying the game, and that like baffles you. So like, what percentage of people do you think in LCS actually enjoy the game?
In LCS that enjoy the game? I don't know. I think it's hard to say, because what I think here's like my like secret hidden idea is that they actually enjoy the game more than they say they do. So like there are people that say that they don't like the game, or rather, here's like what's really common to me that I hear all the time is that people enjoy the game when they're winning, right?
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me at all. Like it actually doesn't, because like I've had a ton of games where I was winning for 95% of it, and then I threw the last 1 minute and lost. It doesn't make any sense to me that like I would suddenly just not have fun. Like I changed my mind the whole 30 minutes, and the 31st minute decided whether I had fun for the last 30 minutes. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. So for them, I think it's just they're upset that they lost, but they still had fun, right? But they don't want to say that they had fun because they lost, right? Nothing good comes from a loss, right? So I think for me, I don't know. It's really hard to put a number in terms of LCS. I think that I would say like a large majority actually have fun playing League. I think it's like more rare that like people just never enjoy it. And I think honestly, I don't know. I don't know if there's anyone that just literally never enjoys it. I think everyone at least enjoys it during like there's gonna be levels, right? But I think that everyone enjoys it when they're playing in LCS, except for Bang, because Bang said he didn't. I really don't like that Bang said that. I don't know if he changed though, so you never know. But he said that he really didn't like playing the League like a few years ago when he was on SKT. So I guess 98%.
You said something along the lines of like nothing good comes from loss except for information. Like if you lose, like there's a lot of information that you can kind of get from it. And win or lose.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, lose is a prove, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's a joke, but it's not a joke. You know what I mean? Like you do improve more when you lose. That's true. It's just bad. Like I mean, it's mostly solo queue players that I hear saying that. Most pro players don't say that they only have fun when they win, but it's a lot of solo queue players. So it makes more sense that they're not thinking about improving.
So why are you streaming Melee more than you are League?
I haven't streamed Melee in like a really long time.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Why is your YouTube filled with Melee and you have only made one League video about tempo, which is a really good video, but why all Melee?
I was having a ton of fun playing Melee. I don't know. I mean, it goes back to like playing different games, you know? Like Melee is one of the games that I watch at a like more than a common person's viewing experience, right? I understand it's slightly better than other people, not like compared to people that actually play it, right? But like I understand it's slightly better, right? And I thought that it was helping me get better at League. I would do it for like 30 minutes a day, and I did it for like 3 months or something. And I genuinely thought at the time that it was helping me play. Like it helped me with like mechanics, obviously, like first off, but also like there's a lot more really quick decision making skills that you do in Melee compared to League, right? In League, generally things are a lot slower compared to Melee at least, and it's only in like team fights where you're gonna get even close to the same like thoughts that you need to think about in a second. And that was like the big thing for me when I was playing Melee, is like practicing that specific part of my mind where I'm like, okay, there's like 700 things I need to think about, like which things are important and which things are not important, right? And the reason that I put them on YouTube is because I just thought it'd be fun to put them on YouTube. And the reason I don't have any League videos is I have too high of a standard for League videos for me. I've tried making a ton of League videos, and the reason I never did is always because I get to a point where I'm like, this is not good enough. And I refuse to put this out, and I don't want to work on this anymore because it's just not, it doesn't reach like my quality bar. And that's why I only have like one like talking video about League. And that video, like, it came as the accumulation of like all the times I've tried, and I was just like, I am making this video, and I'm making it no matter what. And I just made it. So I also didn't do like highlights because I don't want my YouTube channel to be highlights for my stream. I just didn't want that. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I just didn't want that to be the case. I either wanted to do it myself, where I edit the videos myself, or I just didn't want to do it.
Fair enough. Who's the best doctor?
Doctor?
Yeah.
In Doctor Who?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I love these questions. Who's the best doctor? Oh man, that's so hard actually. Dude, you actually unlocked Pandora's box. I could talk about Doctor Who for so long, man.
It's like everyone's dilemma, which is like when you start watching it, you're like, oh man, this is the best doctor. And then you see the new doctor, and you're like, I don't know about this guy. But then by the time like it's time for that guy to go, you're like, oh man, I really like that doctor. That's the best doctor. And then you get the next doctor.
Have you watched a lot of Doctor Who?
I have not watched the last 2 seasons. I watched up to what, season 6 or 7? Up to Matt Smith. I think, who was after Matt Smith?
Peter Capaldi.
I stopped at Peter. So yeah, I was Matt Smith. I'll give you my answer, which is every doctor was the best doctor at when they started, and I want to just give love to all of them. I think David Tennant was just the most fun and happy and whatever, and Matt Smith just seemed like almost like a little too brooding, like just like serious a little bit, but he's still good. Like he's a very complex whatever, but I'm gonna say David Tennant, but then almost David Tennant lacks the complexity of Matt Smith, but
It's curious that they say that, because I think the general perception among like Doctor Who people that watch a lot of Doctor Who is actually the reverse on what you said.
Wow.
I think most people think that David Tennant is more darker and serious, which it seems weird, but I think when you actually, if you think about like the overall trend, because it's not necessarily like him as a person, it's more about like the stories that he's in, right? Which is always super important when you're talking about Doctor Who, like which Doctor is the best, because a lot of like the early, not necessarily early Doctor, a lot of like the mid, like 5, 6, and 7, they suffer from like having bad stories, right? So it's not necessarily that their Doctor is bad, but it's just that their stories are bad, so they look bad. I haven't watched a ton of the really old Doctors.
You mean like before?
Before the new. I have watched before Christopher Eccleston. I watched a decent amount of 3. I watched I think 1 episode of 2. I watched all the Regeneration episodes. I watched all of them, and then I watched like a few more. I watched a bunch of 4. I would say my favorite, honestly, is probably is Peter Capaldi. So I don't know, it's probably Peter Capaldi. And that's not because I started watching when it was his Doctor, because I started watching, actually I got really unlucky when I started watching, because I heard, I'm just making connections everywhere, but this goes back to like the reason I read the 2,500 chapter novel was because it was so long, right? So I had so much stuff to read. I wanted to watch Doctor Who, at least like try to start it, because it was like, I had heard, right, that there's a lot before, so there's a lot of stuff that I could watch. So I was like, yeah, I'll try it, and then I really liked it. And it actually happened that when I started watching, I started watching like right after the finale of the whatever season 1 was on, so I had to wait the entire time. Like I didn't start watching like right before the next season, which would have been really hype. I started watching like right as season 7 ended, and I was like, that sucks. So, I mean, I started watching basically during Matt Smith. Matt Smith was like the current Doctor, but Peter Capaldi was like the first new episode that I watched. For me, I don't know. I love all the Doctors. They're so good. I think that all of them are so good in their own ways. I think David Tennant is really, really good. I think Matt Smith is also really, really good. There are things I like and dislike about the Doctors. So like, the thing I don't like about Matt Smith is that he's too romantic, which I don't like.
I think that's what,
Like, I think it's a little too romantic. He's a little too much of a Casanova Smurf. But I love like everything. Like, he's like my favorite other than that. I think like the way he explains things and like the way he acts when he's not being like romantic, or when he's not talking to people that he's like romantically, well, he's not really romantically interested, but like quote unquote romantically interested in. I think that's like super good. I really like the way that he talks in some of the episodes, and like, for example, like the episode where he's talking to James Corden. That episode's so good. I really like that episode because he's just like, it really shows like the best qualities of him in my opinion. And he was like my favorite for a long time. The reason he was like my favorite over David Tennant because of that point exactly. But I also really like David Tennant. I think David Tennant's also really good. David Tennant also has that problem where he's also a little bit of a womanizer, but he also has a problem with like he looks like David Tennant, so it's like, well, yeah, that's the kind of it's like understandable problem, but like I think they're both good. I mean, I love Doctor Who. Christopher Eccleston's also really good, but he only had one series.
Yeah.
So that was really unfortunate, but I really liked him too because he actually didn't have that. Right? He was not a womanizer at all. He like really stuffed every single time. Every single attempt that Rose had was absolutely destroyed, which was really funny to me. And her mom, which is also funny. But Peter Capaldi to me is my favorite because it's probably like slightly biased because my favorite episode of ever is during Peter Capaldi's run. But I think he's my favorite because he has like a really good mix of like being like very authoritative and having like a good grasp of the situation and understanding of the situation when things are very serious, but also has like the mix of like being like a silly alien that doesn't know human stuff, right? You haven't watched his season, but like I would recommend it, but I would always recommend Doctor Who to everybody that I know, but no one wants to hear about it.
All right, I'm gonna give you. You have to do this relatively shortly. Favorite episode? Mine was the Perfect Ginger, the Finsifanko one.
Okay.
Just because it's so validating of a life that is torturous and whatever, but in the end, like it created this like wonderful art. And when Bill Nye like gives his speech about like why he's the best painter ever, just like I'm getting like teary eyes. I have to go watch this right after this. So for you said that one of your favorite episodes was the newer Doctor, so you stand by that? I didn't sway
for sure.
you.
Nope, my favorite episode for sure is I think it's called like The World End in Time or something. It's the finale. It's the first part of the finale episode of like season 9. No, not season 9. Season 10. And the reason I love it so much is because it combines time dilation with Doctor Who.
Okay.
Time dilation.
Don't tell anyone.
Okay. I just like right when I saw that, like it's really early in the episode, so it's not like a spoiler.
Oh, okay.
Right when I saw that it had time dilation in the episode, I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be so good. And then it just gets better. Like, that's all I'm gonna say. But it actually, like, that's all that I needed. And then it had the next part, and I was like, what? So that's all.
All right, I'm gonna go binge watch Doctor Who now. All right,
so
we're getting towards the end of this, but I wanted to ask. So you said I have my own values, fundamental goals, and beliefs of how things are, and that when other people have different values, it's not about one person's being right or wrong. It's just that I have my way of thinking, and they have their way of thinking. So, what are your values, fundamental goals, and beliefs of how things are?
When life?
Yeah.
Values,
or in league,
beliefs. Values, beliefs, and fundamental goals. Was that the 3?
Yep.
Values, beliefs, and fundamental goals. Wow, okay. I mean, for me, I think I'll start with fundamental goals because I'm a driven person. So I have like a lot of goals in my life that I want to eventually achieve. So for starters, right, we already talked about it. I want to write a book at some point in my life, which for which for me means like when I have like time to like think about or like watch a new medium or watch a new show or whatever, then I want to do that. I want to like get as much information about stories as possible, because I think it would be like really, really fun to do that. And I guess that kind of goes into like my values. Like I really value like enjoyment and fun, which I don't know, seems like most people would. I don't know, it kind of sounds silly, but like for me, that's like the most important thing is enjoying whatever I'm doing, because if I don't enjoy something, I really don't do it. And there have been like books and shows that I just stopped watching because I stopped enjoying them. And even if I was really far into them too, I would just stop watching them anyway because I wasn't enjoying them anymore. Which is actually pretty rare, but it has happened before. And another fundamental goal I have is at some point I want to get a math degree. So that means I have to go back to school at some point. Hopefully not anytime soon, because then that means League didn't go well, but you know, I want to do that at some point, and not for any reason other than like I just want to have a math degree. I don't actually want to use the math degree for anything. I just want to like go and get one because I think I really enjoy math. I think math is super cool. I think that people have like a bad stigma, and I think that something that somebody I don't remember if this is like an actual fact or like just what somebody like conjectured to be true, which is that I think it was Stephen Fry said that like he thought that he didn't like math when he was younger, and then he thought he didn't like it because he wasn't good at it, right? But what was actually true is because he thought that he wasn't good at it, he wasn't good at it. And because he didn't like that, he didn't like math. But then when he got older, he was like, oh, math is actually really cool, and now I like it, right? So I've always liked math when I was younger. So I just want to get a math degree because I think it's really cool, the kind of ideas and concepts, and I want to like do something in math. Like I want to like prove something. I don't know what it's going to be because, you know, math degree is pretty generic, right? Not very specific. So I'm leaving my options open on what I'm going to do, but my goal is at some point I'm going to do that later in my life. And my belief comes down, like, I'll mention like my beliefs, and like my number one belief that I've had for a really long time about my own life is that if I decide to do something, then I will be able to do it if I actually really had a good reason to do it. And generally, the really good reason is going to be that I enjoy it. So the reason I'm like quote unquote confident that I'm going to write a book / get a math degree is because I think it would be fun to do those things. Even though they might not always be fun during the whole thing, I think it would be a fun process to go through. And I believe that I'm driven enough to commit and finish those projects. And I think that that's one of my strong suits as a person, is that I'm capable of like fully focusing on one thing. And for other fundamental goals I have is I talked about chess, and I want to get good at chess at some point. That's another thing I want to do in my life. And same reason, I just think chess is really cool, and also with melee. I also want to get good at melee. So I have a lot of things. Those are like the 4 things that I'm like, these are things I will do in my life at some point. With reference to League, I think my only fundamental goal is really just be as good as I can. Like, as long as I don't feel like I didn't waste my time, like I didn't like go into a split and like not try and not practice, like then I'm okay. Like if I tried to be as good as I can and then I just suck at the game, then like, okay, you know, like if I'm just not good at League and I'm not going to be the best, then like I can't like change, like I can't like alter my brain so that I'm better at League, you know? I just have to like try and be as good as I can, and that will take me however far it takes me. my own opinion is that I would be really, 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 really good, right? But like that doesn't matter, right? My goal is just to be as good as I can be, right? And practice as much as I can. And my like values based on around those things are kind of like just, I mean, it's more so like my values kind of like fun, obviously. I really enjoy fun, as everyone does. And I value like, I don't know, values is kind of a weird one. Because I think that like, obviously I really care about my family and my friends are all really important to me. And there are like a lot of people that I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without them, and I'm forever grateful to those people. But in terms of like more like, I don't know, not that those aren't important, it's just like those are like very like basic, and like a lot of people have that as a value. So definitely family and friends are super important to me. Enjoyment, like being like, I don't know, I guess a value of mine is like being like driven to do something, because it's not something I really thought about until now, but like there are a lot of things that I want to do, and if I didn't want to do any of them, then I didn't know what I would do. You know, I feel like I would just be like floating in the emptiness of space, right? And not like, I feel like it gives me purpose to do stuff, to try and do stuff, to try and be good at stuff, to try and learn stuff, to try and create stuff. It gives me purpose in life. And I think like in reality, like that's like what you try and do, or that's like what a lot of people have said is like the meaning of life, right? It's like find a meaning. The meaning is you need to find something that is the meaning, right? And for a lot of people, right, that's like children, right? And like making the best world for their child as they possibly can. And for me, I don't know, maybe I'll get a child. I'm not sure.
You just said it like you're gonna order one on Amazon.
I mean, yeah, but like at some point, right? Like, here's the thing. For me, I've realized that like, how old am I? 21? I don't even remember. I'm either 20 or 21. I think I'm 21. When I was 14, I had a very different worldview than I do now. And when I was thinking, when I was 14 years old and thinking about where I would be now and how I would think now, it was very different from how I actually think, right?
I would
and
hope so.
things that, yeah, I mean, and things that I thought I would not understand, I understand now, right? Where I'm just, I'm definitely like on the same, I'm on a different understanding than I used to be. And that's why like I like say nonchalantly like, yeah, I'm like I might get one. It's because like I don't know where I'm gonna go in the future, right? And I think it's really hard for me specifically to like know for sure like what I'm gonna want to do, because like I don't know how my mentality is gonna change, because I'm sure that it's gonna change in a way that I will never ever understand right now, right? It's gonna be based on some life experience that I have most of the time, and that life experience is most likely going to be something I wouldn't expect, right? That was something that my dad told me. It was like the things that like the really critical changing points in people's lives are never the things that they think would be, right? For the most part, right? So like I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know how I'm going to think when I'm 30 or what I'm going to be doing when I'm 30. But I'm like, I am not like shutting down anything, because I don't know how I'm going to think, right?
I think it's those beliefs, goals, values that kind of inform all those little micro decisions from moment to moment that, you know, traject you into a certain trajectory. That was good. So to wrap this up, we've got a rapid fire, but before the rapid fire, one last two-part question, which is, what did you get from the people that you worked with last split, and what do you hope to give to the people that you're going to be working with next split?
What did I get, or what did I get from the people working?
Yeah, like
when I
what
was
do you
working last
learn?
month?
How do they add? Like, how do they help you?
I think probably not the biggest thing, but one big thing that I did not realize before this split was that the way that I spoke to people when I was on TSM was okay because everybody on TSM did it. So like culturally speaking, right? The way that like I talked about League and like in reviewing stuff was good for when I was on TSM. But when I moved to Golden Guardians, it wasn't good, and it was toxic, or not toxic, but it was like bad, right? Because it was like, it sounded like I was really angry and upset when I really wasn't. It was just like how I spoke, right? So for me, what I learned a lot was like coming in as like a new player to the org, I need to like learn the new other perspectives, because I've only like I was on like an org when I was on my Challenger team, but that was like a really like, not like an org like TSM or like Golden Guardians, right? Like, so like I had to like get a new perspective on just like different, the way like different orgs are, and like have to like be very observant on how everybody interacts with each other. And that was something that like initially like I was very like not confused, but I was like misunderstanding, or I was making other people misunderstand me because of the way that I was acting. And in terms of like next split on what do I hope to learn from my new,
What do you hope to kind of like contribute?
Oh, okay. Yeah, for me, for next split, for sure, is I'm hoping to like actually show like what I'm capable of, because I thought that last split I played really bad, and it came down to like being like super egotistical. I thought like during the split I was really like, my ego was really, really big, and I think that really was a detriment to my performance. So for next split, I have reflected on the previous split, and I think for next split I'm going to try and show why it is that I am, why I think I'm as good as I am in my head. My intentions will match. I hope to show that my intentions will match my actual performance, or like my perceived team-like environment, because it's also not necessarily like an individual thing. Like I also think like I'm good at helping people, and I'm good at teaching certain things. Not everything, but I'm good at teaching sometimes, and I like teaching. So like if I want to help like Alex, for example, with something, then next split, right, when I'm feeling a lot more confidence and I don't have to super focus on myself, I can like help him more, right? So I think that's for sure where I'm gonna be going for next split.
A lot of times people want to give the way that they want to give as opposed to the way that people need to receive. And so with that intention that you want to be able to, do these things, but it's then the actions that kind of, tell that. So I think that's a pretty good goal. By the way, I forgot that in honor of AblazeOlive, I got a olive pizza from Ablaze Pizza. So in honor of you. To wrap this up, thank you for the time. We're going to do the James Lipton Actors Studio questionnaire. You ready?
Sure.
What is your favorite word?
Favorite word? Indecision.
Irony. What is your least favorite word?
Least favorite word? Unable.
What turns you on?
What? Attractiveness.
What turns you off?
Not attractiveness.
You are a learned man. What sound
you.
or noise do you love?
Sound or noise do I love?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, there is one. Oh my god. I'm never gonna think about it fast though. Sound or noise? Oh. I really like I really like the sound effect when do you know a JoJo?
Jojo Rabbit?
No. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
There's a sound effect in a anime/manga where some guy stops time, and the sound effect for that is really cool. I really like that sound effect.
What does it sound like?
It sounds, oh man, I can't. It's not. Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
It's like, whoosh, I don't know. And there's also like ticking because it's clocked time stop.
All right, I have to look that up. What sound or noise do you hate?
Sound or noise do I hate? I really don't like piercing yells or like cries, piercing cries.
Favorite curse word?
Favorite curse word? I don't know. I assume I shouldn't say it, yeah? Probably, I don't know, actually. I mean, I really like, it's not actually a curse word anymore. But in Britain, bloody used to be a curse word. But I really like bloody. But I don't say it because it would be so weird if I said it. But I think it's really a funny word.
Bloody hell. If you do it like a British accent.
Yeah, like
works.
if you do it like Ron Weasley, like I think it's really funny.
We didn't even touch on Harry Potter. What profession other than yours would you like to attempt? Other than mathematician, melee player, author,
chess player.
I guess that's it.
Other than those, actor.
Great. What profession would you not like to do?
Some desk job, because like, can you imagine sitting in front of the computer all day?
All right, you're like the 8th person who said this, and you have to realize the irony of that. You get behind a computer.
Of course I do.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I was saying it. I mean, I was saying it as a joke, but like that's actually my answer. But not because of that. I just wouldn't want to do that because it's like I know that's like my answer is a desk job, but not because I would be sitting in front of a computer all day. Just because it would be so boring. I would just go insane. So that's why.
I can't tell you how many League players have said like, oh man, having a desk job and going and sitting behind a computer all day would be like terrible. Without the irony. Irony.
I knew it.
Okay.
I was saying it intentionally.
Okay, good. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
If heaven exists, what would I want God to say when I arrive at the pearly gates? I would want him to say, yo, I saw this one League clip you did. That was pretty sick, dude.
And on that note, Nick, AblazeOlive, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you very much.